Sydney Harbour Bridge was shut down today as 90,000 anti-Israel protesters marched for humanity. Who knew marching for humanity meant calling for the death of Israeli soldiers or waving Hamas flags, Taliban flags and images of the supreme leader of Iran?
Marchers included Bob Carr, Maureen Faruqi and Julian Assange, all denouncing the supposed starving of Palestinians, while conveniently ignoring a gruesome video put out by Hamas today showing a skeleton-thin Jewish hostage being forced to dig his own grave in a tunnel beneath Gaza.
Marchers also ignored the Sydney public, whose ability to traverse the city was made impossible by the bridge closure. High-profile activist Nasser Mashni wasn't pretending to care. In a tweet that was effectively flipping the bird to everyone in Sydney, he wrote, and I quote, "Whose bridge? Our bridge. From the river to the sea, always was, always will be."
Yeah, and traffic chaos was compounded by the fact that police allowed protesters to walk back over the bridge once the march had ended, and there were concerns of a crowd crush.
We were really concerned about a crowd crush. For example, we could not get those people, the significant size of that crowd, off that northern egress route without risking crowd crush. Gee whiz, I wouldn't like to try and do this every Sunday at that short notice. And thankfully, we have had an operation, whilst perilous at times, turned out that everyone has gone home safe.
I just thought this was an absolute disgrace today, and the whole thing was fraudulent. They called it a march for humanity. How many Israeli flags did you see? How many people did you see calling for the release of the 50 hostages still held in Gaza 666 days since October 7, 2023? Not a single one. So it's a march for humanity, but clearly Jews aren't considered human because no one was concerned about them. When you're shouting death to the IDF, that's not a march for humanity. When you're waving terrorist flags, that's not a march for humanity. And when you're holding up images of the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, that's not a march for humanity either. And when you talk to some of the protesters, as I did this afternoon, you don't have to talk for long to find out where they're really at. I was talking to a lovely couple, seemingly lovely. They drove up from Melbourne to participate in the rally today. They would have been in their 50s. I said, "What are you protesting for?" They said, "A free Palestine." I said, "Well, if you got a free Palestine, who would be in charge of it?" They said, "Well, the governing body." I said, "Right now, the governing body is Hamas." And they looked at me and shrugged and smiled. And these were just normal sort of people that you'd see every day in the street. This idea of marching for humanity is garbage. This is anti-Israel, and it was quite disgraceful.
I completely agree. This is a real shameful day for Australia. Reminiscent, James, of the scenes we saw on the Sydney Opera House steps to the day after October 7. This is exactly the same. When you've got people marching, waving terrorist flags of Hamas, the Taliban and the Ayatollah. And these images also, they're going to go worldwide as well. And that is a complete embarrassment. The fact that they're saying this was our bridge, they are laughing in our faces.
Yeah.
They are laughing at Australians. They're laughing at you and I. They are laughing at our values, just like they did on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. And let's be very clear, this is not Australia. This is not the Australia we know and love. This is a complete rejection of Western values. And we are going on a very, very dangerous pathway here when suddenly this is the new normal where scenes like this are allowed to take place. Also worth mentioning, police were so worried about the scenes today. When these activists put forward their applications for this protest to go ahead, they said that there was only going to be 10,000 people protesting. There were 90,000 today. I would love to know how much that cost the taxpayer, the amount of resources that police would have had to have used for them to monitor that. They were so worried that there was going to be a crowd crush. One of the police officers got up there today and he actually said for the first time in his entire career, he was worried that there was going to be deaths. That is how bad it was. So these police are being taken off other jobs to satisfy the needs of these activists. And you know, James, I think it's really shameful, to be honest. Like, I feel ashamed, the vision that I saw coming out today, and it's just a real sad and it's a real worrying state of affairs. These people are laughing in our faces.
It's funny when you say this is not Australia, and I understand your sentiment. The problem is this is Australia. We've been saying this is not Australia for a number of years now, but the country has changed fundamentally. And sadly, this is modern Australia, unfortunately. And these protesters have been emboldened. We had the police saying this protest should not go ahead. We had the state premier saying this protest should not go ahead. But then a judge made a decision that, in spite of all of that, it would go ahead. And the tweet that we showed earlier, this bridge is our bridge, it belongs to us, just shows how emboldened they've become. Remember, they've been shutting down the CBD every weekend for almost 2 years. It started at the Opera House, a national icon, now the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Who knows what's next? But I tell you what, they're not in fear or in any doubt that they will be able to do as they please. But I tell you who else is emboldened by this is Anthony Albanese, who has been inching over the last couple of weeks towards joining the UK, the Canadian Prime Minister and the French in recognising a Palestinian state at the UN in September. This march will certainly embolden him that he can get away with that.
Well, but by the UK, France and Canada coming out last week say that they would recognise Palestine, that already gave him some ammunition to go ahead with it. And it would be easy for him to come out. And that's why I think we had so many Labor MPs last week saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But now he's going to see this 90,000 crowd and he's got to go, well, this represents Australia. This is what they want. So it'd be very easy for him now to make that decision. I have no doubt that we will be following suit next month at the meeting of the United Nations. There's no doubt in my mind.
How do you feel if you're a Jewish Australian watching all of this?
But this is what I feel really sad to see those scenes. It makes me feel sad. I'm not Jewish, but for the wonderful Jewish community that we've got in this country, they have been through so much since October 7, 2023. And to see 90,000 people, some waving flags of terrorist groups, it just goes against all of our values, and you've got to feel for the community.
Can I tell you one more thing? This couple I was speaking to, just at the train station, a normal couple, I said to them, riddle me this, the whole from the river to the sea, where does a two-state solution fit into that? And they said, well, it starts with two states. And I said, what? And it ends up with one Palestinian state? And they said, two states is a beginning, and smiled again. And that's why I call this whole thing a fraud. It's anti-Israel. There's no intention of living peacefully with Israel.
No.
And it's just disgraceful. And if you're a Jewish Australian watching that, you would despair for the way this country is going.
Absolutely, you would, no doubt.